It's Friday, the 11th of April 2025, and today Wendy Richardson has kindly volunteered to share some of her memories from her early life at Lower Barrington. Welcome, Wendy.
Hello, I moved to Lower Barrington in May 1950 with my parents, Ray and Elsie Rowland. There were four of us kids. Neil was 18 at the time and he stayed in Launceston because he was working. He told me years later that he felt as though he'd been abandoned, which made us all laugh. Darryl would have been 15. He was still going to school. And when he left, I think the plan was for him to share farm with Dad. He was going quite well until, unfortunately, he was diagnosed with cancer in 1953 and died early in 1954. And then there was Tony, who was a bit of a rebel, to put it politely, and still is. He was 2 years older than me, and we were both going, well, I wasn't going to school at that stage. I went the next year. So it was a bus to Sheffield fairly early in the morning and didn't get home until about 5 at night. And that was the sum total. Dad and Mum both grew up in Ulverston. Dad did his apprenticeship and he was a qualified cabinet maker. Mum worked at Crookshanks and she was a milliner, and she was a very good embroiderer, and she had a lovely singing voice, so she was involved in whatever the leave-in players were called at that stage, and she was on stage in a couple of productions, which stood her in good stead later for Sunday school concerts at Lower Barrington, where she organised all the singing and whatever, got us all bossed around into doing all sorts of things we wouldn't have done otherwise. When we moved from Invermain, Launceston, and it was only a block away from Invermain Road. So at the age of 5, Mum and I could walk up to Invermain Road and hop on the tram and into town. So it was a little bit different when we got to Lower Barrington because Dad was the only driver. So we had to rely on him and his mood at the time, whether we got anywhere or not. I think the churches in the district were the focal point of the social life. We turned up for Sunday school and church, and then there were lots of, there was Harvest Festival and Sunday school anniversaries and all that sort of thing. Mum was on the guild and Dad was on the trust. He worked quite a bit on the old hall. He did a lot of work there, put the ceiling in the hall because that was unlined at that stage when we moved there, and if there was rain when anything was on in the hall you couldn't hear a thing. And then the supper room was built and he was involved heavily in that. He was also trying to do a lot of work on our house. I can remember when we first got there was a bath in one of the big rooms, an old tin bath, that no hot water, any luxury like that. So Mum used to have to boil the copper and cart the water in for us. So you had a bath once a week, whether you needed it or not. The toilet was a dunny, like everybody else had, half a mile away from the house, it seemed to me as a little kid. And so ran out there under a dripping lucerne hedge, and yeah, fun and games. I can remember when the septic tank was put in and we had a flush toilet. It was like luxury. We even had proper toilet paper then, instead of the Advocate. So the Advocate was very essential in our house. Dad used to read it from go to woe, and he knew exactly what was going on around the place. And if there was any sales, especially the sales section, if there was any clearing sale going on, he was there, and if he saw a box with a couple of things in it that he thought looked pretty useful, he'd grab those, and everything else was left in the box when he got home. One of the things he did find was there was a sale by tender for the Ulverston ambulance. I can't remember which year this was, but I know Neil was there. I can't really figure it out, but it was before the Bramages moved there, because Eric Harvey was living in that house at that stage. So anyway, Dad put in a tender for the ambulance. It was a 1938 Dodge, so it would have been about 20 years old anyway. It was a horrible fawny colour. It had a 8-cylinder motor in it, a brute of a thing to drive, because that was one of the things we learnt to drive on, besides the tractors and the car. And anyway, when he went to pick it up, Neil must have come home so he could drive the car back. So he said it was fun watching Dad take off with all the lights going. The siren had been taken out, but all the lights were going. And so he put the foot down and went like as fast as he could all the way home. And then that night, they decided they'd have a bit of fun before he bought it so he could take the pigs to the sale. That was the story. So he dressed up in a dark coat and a peak cap, and Mum put probably a nappy or something round her head to look like a nurse, and along the road we went. Neil and I were in the back. The stretcher was still in the back, so we were trying not to laugh too much. We got to the Harveys and Dad hopped out and raced in, and poor old Eric came out and said, "What on earth are you doing here?" And he said, "We've come to take you to the hospital." So Eric recognised Dad's voice. And so there was a lot of laughter then, and then we went over to the Brookses, who'd moved to Lower Barrington about the same time as us. And he just, Lance came out and Dad just picked him up. He wasn't going to speak because he knew he'd know who was there. So anyway, the old ambulance was sort of adapted with a timber gate thing in the back so he could put his animals in it to take to the sale and cart lots of things around the place. When we moved there, the farm was a mixed farm, like I suppose most of them were at that stage of the game. We had cows and pigs and sheep and a couple of draft horses and goats at one stage. And, the horses, the draft horses used to be used before the tractors were bought. And, I think I can remember about 3 different tractors there. One of them Dad had bought, and the rest of us must have gone somewhere. Tony was home at that stage, and he, being himself, decided he'd have a little trip in it. So he started it up, headed off to Sheffield, did a lap around the recreation ground and came home again. So, dear. And then another little trip of his was to take the ambulance, telling Mum and Dad some story about somebody had a licence and they were going to drive them away, and these boys were going camping for the weekend because the one who was supposed to be driving got off the bus that night, didn't he? So there was hell to pay after that. Anyway, Tony, well, I mean, we both headed off to Devonport High School after grade 6, and I used to cop it from the others. Oh, you're Tony's sister. So I don't know what he'd been up to. But when he finished school, he came home on the farm as well to start with, and when he turned 17, he had to have wheels, so Dad probably thought he was going to get a ute or something that would be useful, but no. He came home with it was British Racing Green MGTF, 1954 model. It had a light green fiberglass top that we used to have to take off it to go anywhere. But he decided that he'd rather take me than all the girls that wanted to go out with him in his car. So he and I got on very well after that. School buses were, well, I think everybody else has spoken about the long trips in those and the breakdowns and the fun and games that went on in them. We were broken down at one stage, I can remember, down the bottom of the Don Hill. And somebody put a potato up the exhaust pipe, so that was another problem I had with it. I can remember visiting the Gillams quite often. I think they must have got sick of me, actually, because Bev and Aileen were pretty close to my age and within walking distance, so we had a bit of time together, which was nice. And the Brookses were along the road. As I said before, they moved there about the same time as we did, so and the men used to help each other quite a lot with the baling, etc. We had a stationary baler which took a lot of men to run. The grass had been cut several days before and all raked into a big heap, so that had to be forked into it, and someone was putting in the divider and the wire or whatever to tie it up with, and then they'd have to be hauled out and stacked up ready to go into the barn. That went on for quite a while, several years. That'd be towed around the neighbourhood and everyone would do their baling, and then Dad got a mobile baler, which was his pride and joy, and that was put under the skillion next to the stables after the baling season, and covered up with a tarpaulin. So it was probably meant to be safe, but the chooks got in there, didn't they, and left and peppered it. So Father wasn't happy at all. Mum used to have quite a few chooks and geese and ducks, and Christmas and Easter would be mad panic trying to dress all this poultry and send it all over the place. She used to send a bird up to Neil because he was in Sydney at that stage, and she'd make cakes and biscuits and all that sort of thing. Before she got a an electric mixer. She had big trouble with her hands with arthritis, and she'd scrub out a bucket from the dairy and bring it in, and I had to sit on the little chair and mix it all up with my hands. You can imagine that, can't you? Creaming butter and sugar and adding eggs and all the rest of it. So she got the new kitchen eventually went on, and she got a Sunbeam Mixmaster, so she was in business then. But I can still hear the things like ginger beer exploding in the middle of the night and having to clean it all up. And we don't know we're alive these days.
One of my fondest memories is coming into your mum's and dad's after school, and she made the most wonderful cinnamon apple cake.
Yeah, she was a great cook.
She was a fantastic cook.
Yeah. And I can remember Bev being there too, helping cut up veggies for pickles at one stage. She did a better job than I did. I got growled at, but Bev was doing the right size. Oh dear. Yeah. So I was there until I was 17, and then I headed off to Launceston to do my nursing training. That wasn't anything that I had in mind to do in my older years, but anyway, that's what I did, and that was the end of it. Well, I did come back and live in Lower Barrington for about 3 years after I was married. My eldest son was born, well, my only son was born while we were living there. Sadly, Mum was only 60 when she took sick and had a brain tumour, which landed her in hospital for the next 9 months until she died. And Dad struggled on. He got himself a partner called Nell, and they stayed there until, I think it was 1977. We were part of the district for 27 years. Then he moved to Shearwater, but he took a tractor with him because blocks needed to be cleared down there, so that kept him busy. So he was there from the age of 41 until he was 68. Not a bad record, not a bad age to retire.
For a long time I wondered why we always called them Auntie Elsie and Uncle Ray, and I thought it was just to be polite in those days because they were our neighbours, but I've since found out we are connected through the Dawes family.
Yes, yeah.
Which is amazing.
Yes.
Mum and your dad were first cousins.
They were first cousins, were they? Right, okay. Yeah. I can remember before we moved down there, going down there to stay at one stage. I couldn't believe it. I was only 5 when we moved there, but evidently there was another farm at Wesley Vale that they were interested in. That didn't have a house on it. I think that was the sticking point with that one. But I sometimes wonder how life would have turned out, whether it would have been much different or not if we had have moved there. But I think Dad helped build the house at East Devonport that the Dawes moved into. I don't think they had any children.
So how do you feel Lower Barrington and the involvement in the community shaped your life?
Really don't know. Neil gave me a piano accordion for my 11th birthday, which I could play fairly quickly because unfortunately I could play by ear, and that was traded in on a bigger model, and I was carted around playing the rotten thing all over the place. So we got to see quite a few different church halls, all of which were fairly cold, I remember. And I still remember the Sunday drives when Dad would take us, Mum and I, and Tony, until he refused to go anymore. He wanted to stay home and listen to the top 40 on 3UZ. So we'd see what was going on, who was growing what, and all that boring stuff. Anyway, the house was still being renovated when Dad finally sold it. So I can remember a lot of that.
So that was an end of an era for you.
It certainly was an end of an era, yes, yeah. So.
Well, thank you, Wendy, for allowing us some insight into your time growing up in the district of Lower Barrington. It's been wonderful.
Okay, thank you. Sorry about